Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk. You might recognize this handsome guy on the screen with me. He's joined us every year, last couple years to talk about the NFL draft. He is Chad Reuter. He, of course, covers the NFL draft for NFL.com, NFL Media. A 4-round mock is his most recent one on the old interwebs. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Chad, we always get a chance to catch up with the Senior Bowl and the Combine, and always great to have our yearly chat about the draft with you.
Yeah, where's this good-looking guy you're talking about? I don't see him. I don't see him back there. I appreciate the invite to come on. It's always fun to talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love talking with you. We had your colleague Eric Edholm on a little bit earlier in the week, and it was kind of our reset to transition from free agency back towards the draft. So we hit a lot of the bigger topics that I know a lot of people want to talk about. We're going to dig more into the weeds here with Chad, which I think is perfect given his penchants for 4-round mocks, 3-round mocks. We'll talk about some day 2 and day 3 guys here as well. But Chad, let's talk about the top, and just generally speaking, this is a great year for me to have a top 10 pick. You have so many what I would consider players that would be selected top 5 in almost any draft at premium positions, which I think is pretty unique. It's a very good year because it's so top heavy.
Yeah, that's right. Even guys like, coming into it, I remember I did a show like 6 weeks ago or so before the Combine, like, why did JJ McCarthy come out? He's probably going to be like a 2nd-round pick and I'm like, I don't know about that, guys. He's really talented. And I think by the time you go through there, so now you also see why guys like Quinn Ewers from Texas went back, because there's a lot of top quarterbacks up there. Then you got the receivers that are up there. It's a great year to have the 6th pick in this draft. That's for sure.
How much action do you think there's going to be ahead of the Giants with these teams trying to come up ahead of them to pick a quarterback? And if the Giants do want one of those top 4 quarterbacks, my sense is that they're not going to be able to stick and pick at 6.
Yeah, Arizona, I think a lot of people are going to say that Arizona should stay there, take Marvin Harrison, but I just think they're going to get too good of a value for the pick that they're for number 4. And if they don't trade, certainly the Chargers have to think about it as well. So I would guess one of those 2 picks will be traded in order to get one of the top 4 guys.
Simply from a grade standpoint, Chad, in terms of how you view them as prospects, how does this quarterback class match up to the wide receivers and the tackle class near the top, like the Joe Alts of the world? If you just go by grade, when does the first quarterback hit after Caleb compared to those wide receivers and offensive tackles for you?
I would say probably 4th in terms of maybe putting – I'm a Brock Bowers guy, so I would put Bowers. I would say Harrison and Bowers are kind of the 2 guys that could potentially jump the quarterbacks at the top of the draft in terms of value. And Malik Neighbors is fantastic too, so he's right in that conversation. So I would say, 4th, 5th. These talented quarterbacks are very talented. They all have holes in their game, obviously, as every college guy does. But there's no reason to think that those 4 guys at the top and maybe a couple others will be starting by the end of their rookie year.
How do you sort and separate those top 4 quarterbacks out?
Well, I think to me, it's very interesting. So Caleb Williams, I go number 1. He can do everything. He throws the best deep ball I've seen since maybe Jeff Blake back in the day in terms of just high arc, really nice ball.
Yeah, Carl Pickens, Darnay Scott days.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's old school. And I really like Jay McCarthy. I think had he been in a different sort of offense, people would be talking a little bit differently about him. I think he's got a lot of potential as a playmaker and a guy from the pocket that can make it. So I think he's got a bright future. Probably I might put him 2nd. Gene Daniels is a very talented dual threat quarterback. I mean, once he gets in the open field as a runner, he is spectacular. He's in the Michael Vick, Randall Cunningham, Lamar Jackson conversation. As a pocket passer, he's probably got a little work to do in terms of, I think a lot of times the last month of the season was really interesting because when you watch him like against Missouri and a couple other games during the year, he was a little hesitant, short-armed some throws because he wasn't really into it. But at the end of the year, he really looked one read, two reads, and then he got out and he got really decisive. And that was really what pushed him to be there. So if he can be that kind of quarterback next level, he'll be really good. So I might put him 3, and then Drake May would be 4. Not because he's not talented. He's very much like Justin Herbert, just slightly shorter version of Justin Herbert, because he can move a little bit too. He's not statue. And I really like he makes some really nice throws. Consistency isn't there. For example, he'll move to his left, he'll throw one in the ground, and then he'll make a perfect throw, 3 plays later. So you don't always know what you're going to get play to play with him. But again, really talented guy. I think he's got a chance to be a starter before his rookie year is over. I mean, even if he isn't pressed into that duty, because he has to.
How much separates the top 3 wideouts for you? Are they in a cluster, or is one maybe either standing apart in a good way or a bad way?
I think Harrison and Neighbors are just slightly higher than Odunze, but if you looked at everything across the board, Odunze is right up. So it's sort of like he doesn't have the explosiveness, but he rates like an 8 and everything, but he might not have the 9s or 10s, right? So that's kind of if you want an Odell Beckham Jr. type of guy, that's Malik Neighbors. I mean, he's tough. He is fast, as he proved today at the pro day. Really strong at the point at the catch point. He helped Jaden Daniels quite a bit this year with some throws, and he was really good for them. And then Harrison's got that Randy Moss kind of feel to him, right? He's a deep threat. He'd go up and get the ball. He can stride past guys. He's a big play machine, and I think he can even grow to be more than that over time. So again, there's not a ton separating those 3 guys, but I think Neighbors and Harrison just have a little touch more explosion, so I'd put them just ahead.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page on that front as well, Chad. All right, anybody that you think, and you already mentioned Bowers, maybe he's the guy. Anyone else that you think in the first round that you consider to be either much better than what the quote unquote consensus is, or do you think the consensus is maybe overrating a little bit?
I like Bowers a lot more than some, and I understand that. But to me, if he hadn't had the injury this year, I don't think we'd be having any conversation about whether that guy's a top 10 pick or not. And I don't think he. I think he's special in terms. He's got the Travis Kelce type skill set that you want. He's a really good safety valve. He's a really strong blocker, and he can be explosive in the open field too, and difficult to tackle. So I think he does a little bit of everything really well. So I think he's a guy that maybe I like a little bit more than others. Jared Verse is a little, I think some people are kind of coming around, but I think in the beginning of the process, people were thinking he's an average athlete and, he's not that. But look, he had a little bit of a reduction in production this year. A reduction in production. That was good. But Will Anderson did too. And guess what Will Anderson's doing? And I think they're actually fairly similar players. So I think if he lasts until outside the top 10, somebody's going to get a real bargain with him. And the last one, a lot of people are trying to moving Xavier Worthy up into like the late first round right now, but he's not going to be around in the late first round. He's going to be gone by 20. I think he's going to be gone. He could be gone as early as 12. He's really talented. And I think that explosive speed is just something you can't manufacture. You either have it or you don't. And I think a team will really move up the board for him, I think. And to be honest, like John Ross, if you remember when he ran his, he ended up going 9th, but Worthy is a much better prospect than Ross coming out. So I think Worthy is going to be right in that conversation. He'll probably be the 4th receiver off the board, in my opinion.
It's funny watching Worthy, and I kind of rewatched him a little bit the other day. Coming into the year, I thought besides the drops last year, I thought he was, fantastic, over the top, great stuff. I was surprised when I rewatched his second half of the year this year that he didn't have more bombs over the top. Like, I don't know if just that guys are playing so far off him, they weren't letting him. It was the nature of the Texas offense, but there weren't as many of those plays where he was just running by people as I thought there would be.
Yeah, I think part of it is what you said. They're playing a lot of deep coverage over him. And also, look, he's a guy that you want to get the ball in his hands as quickly as possible. And Texas had a lot of success with that. I mean, he can make guys miss in the open field as well as just sprint down the sideline. So get the ball out of Ewer's hands as quickly as possible, and let him do his thing. So, in a different offense, he may get more, more opportunities deep. I think I'm guessing the Chiefs will figure a way to get this guy, and they'll figure a way to get him downfield, and people are going to be chasing him. I think him and Mahomes are going to work well together.
And boy, the Chiefs, if they decide to go wide receiver, who knows? Maybe they'll go offensive tackle at the end of the first round. They have a need for both. There are so many wide receivers that are going to be available, Chad. So let's say the Giants don't go wide receiver in the first round, right? Maybe they pick Joe Alt. Maybe they pick, Olufashinu. Maybe they take a quarterback. Who knows? Whatever the case might be. And they still need that wide receiver, and they're picking at 47, the pick they got from Seattle. Who are your favorite second-round wide receivers that you kind of take a look at, and you're like, all right, I have so many choices, different flavors, size, shapes, skill sets.
Yeah.
Who are some of the guys in the second round that you particularly like?
Yeah, I mean, I think Xavier Legette is going to be one of those guys somewhere in the top 50. He's going to go just the size, speed kind of guy. Maybe just a little bit better than Darius Slayton, just kind of a little upgrade on him in that kind of role. And he's fantastic after the catch as well. And another, if you're looking for a little smaller guy, Lamb McConkey is not a bad pick. You can play him inside or outside. He's a top 50 pick all day, very reliable receiver. And hey, with this new kickoff rule, I'm sticking that dude back and getting these kickoffs because he's going to be really good at that. So I think he's another guy to look for. Adonai Mitchell from Texas, inconsistent, didn't look great at the combine, but in the middle of the second round somewhere, if you can get him, again, another guy that can go over the top really easily. Great size, speed guy at that point in the draft. That's another guy to look for. And another guy that we're not talking about probably enough is Johnny Wilson from Florida State. A lot of people are going to assume that he's going to move to that tight end spot, and maybe he does end up that stand-up guy in the interior. But honestly, he has the footwork, he has the catch radius to be an outside receiver. He's got the strides. I think somebody's going to take him in the second round somewhere and try to see if they can make him more of an outside receiver and put him in the slot at times too to see if they can take advantage of matchups.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
His combine testing was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, Chad. His agility drills, especially at 6'7", with those long legs of his, the fact that he ran as good of a short shuttle on a 3-cone to me was like, all right, maybe he can stick out there at outside wide receiver. Yeah,
that's right. And I think the thing with him is he's got to play stronger. And if they can work on him and do that, watch out, because this guy's got a lot of potential. When he and Jaden Daniels are in Arizona State, nobody saw what we're seeing as both guys, top 50 picks, but it looks like it's happening.
It's funny. You mentioned the new kickoff rule. I'll throw two other guys out there that are fascinating for me in that spot. You mentioned one already in Xavier Legette as a guy who's got top speed and has a little bit of toughness. And then I'm going to throw Malachi Corley out there too. And if the reports are correct that he ran a high 4.4s or even like a 4.50 at his pro day, for him, that's a great time with his build and at 220 and his run after the catch. I thought he showed he could catch the ball pretty well at the Senior Bowl and run some pretty good routes at the Senior Bowl. He's another guy that I think could be a second round pick in that run after the catch type of mold.
Yeah, if that's the time that he runs, that would answer a major question mark for him. And I think if that's what that was, I thought he was sort of a Deebo Samuel kind of guy, but just, one tier lower, in that late second, early third. And I think that could be great. And it's going to be interesting with the new rule. I haven't really been able to talk with anybody about this. But I think you're going to see more guys that are more like punt returners back for kick returns because it's more like a punt now. So I think it'll be interesting to see if you have smaller guys who are maybe a little more agility so they can get through those tight holes that are going to be, going through the coverage. So I would be really interested to see how that works out.
Yeah, and the Giants have a Wan'Dale Robinson that maybe they could figure out a way to use in that spot too. I think that would be a fascinating fit if they decide to go there in terms of the kick return rule. Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day to every day, Citizens is made ready for Giants fans with insights, guidance, and solutions. Learn more at citizensbank.com. Joined by Chad Reuter, of course, covers the draft for NFL.com, NFL media. All right, Chad, let's stick here in day two. We did a lot of the round one stuff with Eric. We gave him the easy stuff. We have Chad on. We get into the weeds here a little bit, which we like. Giants need a corner. It could be a slot guy. It could be an outside guy, depending on where they want to play Cordell Flott. And I think day 2 with their 2 day 2 picks would be a kind of good place to focus in there, Chad, on that position. Assuming at 47, and I don't think this is a big assumption, that both Alabama corners are gone, right? The Clemson cornerback's going to be gone. Quinyon Mitchell's going to be gone. Who's that next set of corners for you that you like that could be in the mix, middle of round 2, middle of round 3?
Yeah, I think Kool-Aid McKinstry could be around at 47. I don't think his tape is quite as good as Terrion Arnold's, and I think he could be available at 47. Good pick there, but just one guy to watch that maybe he still be there. I like Cam Hart. He reminds me a lot of Juju Brents coming out, and I think somebody's going to really enjoy that size speed combination. He looked great at Senior Bowl, the tape of Senior Bowl. So I think he's in that conversation, top 50 conversation. Ennis Reichestra from Missouri, super competitive. The same with Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. Neither of those guys are the fastest guys, or the biggest guys, but they're super competitive, and you gotta like that in your outside corner. You gotta have.
You think they're outside guys or slot guys? Those two.
Ennis could probably kick in. I think Kamari's more of an outside guy myself, but I think Ennis has probably got some value in both. So those are the kind of the guys in the middle of the second. Now, a lot of people will say Max Melton from Rutgers is a second round pick, but I think he's a first round pick. So I think he's a guy, if he somehow lands, weight is available in the 40s, I think you got to grab that guy, because you got, again, really competitive, plays the ball well, super athletic. I think somebody's going to take him in the first, but if he ends up in the second, somebody's going to move up and get him.
Wow, I like that. And you think he's an inside guy, Melton?
No, I think he can play both.
Okay.
I think he can play all over the place. He should, in Rutgers, he won't back down from anybody, and no matter what their size. He's got plenty of size. He'd be fine outside.
Now, we haven't seen TJ Tampa much in the postseason draft process. He's been dealing with some injuries, Chad, but I know you've obviously watched the tape. A bigger corner. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I want to see him, what he looks like, how he runs in this Big 12 Pro Day that's coming up next week, or a couple days actually.
Yeah.
And so I'll be very interested to see that. I don't know if he has the speed, the top end speed, but he's certainly physical. He certainly likes to hit. He's one of these guys that at worst is going to be like that early third round guy, late second, early third round guy that comes in and competes right away. If you press, or even if you play a lot of zone and let him come forward and hit somebody, it's great. I don't know if he's the greatest tackler of all time, but he can play the ball and he can do a lot of things. So even if he doesn't test great, he's going to be a pretty solid number 2 corner kind of prospect in the late second, early third.
Do you have any deep sleepers at corner that you like, day 3 guys that maybe you think people are sleeping on a little bit?
I don't know if I have any really. I mean, like a guy like Jerian Jones from Florida State, for example, he could be a 3rd round pick. He could be a 4th round pick. Really good slot corner, really fiery guy. I was at the Shrine game practices this year. He stood out as a guy that brings it every play. He had a great final year with the Seminoles. That was great. Cameron Richardson, Mississippi State, great athlete, but one of the more, he's like 6'2", and he mixes it up. A lot of Mississippi State defenders are like this over the years, right? They like to mix it up. And I really like that from him. He's a really solid mid-round guy. Jarius Monroe from Tulane, another name that people aren't talking about.
I liked him at Shrine. He looked good.
Yeah. Good length, good height, good speed. And he fights for the ball downfield as well as anybody I've seen. So I think there's a lot of those kind of candidates. That Kyrie Jackson, former Alabama, now went to Oregon this year, played really well. He sort of reminds me of Tariq Woolen coming out. And if a team can get him in the 4th or 5th round, like Seattle got Woolen, that'd be a great steal for him.
Yeah, bigger, longer corner if teams are looking for that type of player. All right, let's
not slow either. And not slow either. He
ran well. I think he was sub 4.5, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Good player, and he looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl too. All right, let's take in the secondary. Let's jump over to safety, Chad. I'm not sure we're going to see a top 40 safety. I'm not sure we're going to see a top 50 safety. Maybe we'll see. Your thoughts on the group overall, and any of these guys jump out at you as a potential day 2 pick for the Giants, trying to replace Xavier McKinney?
To me, like the top guy is probably Cooper DeJean. And I know some people put him at corner, which is fine, but to me, he's sort of a nickel safety. He can go in the slot. He's sort of like Brian Branch to me last year, and he went in the middle of the second round in terms of versatility. We haven't seen DeJean work out yet. We'll have to see how he does in his workout to see if he's really as fast as people say he is or not. But either way, he's a really good football player. And I think he might be the first guy off the board that you could consider a safety. I love Javon Bullard from Georgia.
Yeah, he reminds me of Branch a little bit, right? Safety, slot, he could do a little bit of both.
He can do a little bit of everything as well. That's right. And so he's in that category. Jaden Hicks could go top 50 for like the Colts or somebody like that if they want. I think I've projected him to the Giants before too. I mean, he's got such good size. He can work in the box. He wasn't bad as a free. I think he's best kind of in the box near line of scrimmage, but he made some plays deep as well. So I think just that size, aggressive nature, he's a good player as well. So those are the guys that I think are really the second round values.
Yeah, I like Bullard a lot. I think, the slot position, Chad, as you know, is becoming more and more important in the National Football League these days as teams put their best receiver there often. And you need a guy that can support against the run when you're basically playing nickel as your base defense. It's just become a very important position to have a guy in there that could do a little bit of everything. What do you think of Kalen Bullock at a USC? He looks like a corner. He runs, he tracks the ball well. He probably has better ball skills than any other safety in the draft. But then you see him come up and try to tackle, and you're like, I don't know if he's a safety.
That's the issue, right? That's the issue. Well, look, that's a guy may fall because of that, but you can. Again, a team puts him in the right position. Maybe they put him in the slot. Maybe they use him in only certain situations, dime packages or whatever, to make use of his skill set the best that they can. So he may go early fourth round. That might be where he ends up just because of that. But in terms of his potential down the road, if you give him some time, I think he has some, and I think he could work in the right situation.
Cam Kitchens is interesting, and I'm going to turn this into a bigger conversation because I think his tape's solid, right?
Yeah.
But the testing, not so much. Yeah. How important is safety testing to you, Chad? Or is this more of a see it, react quickly, instinct, position, head more than it is time, speed?
Honestly, I think in most situations, look, he's not a guy that you're going to want if you're playing cover 3 or single deep, whatever. You don't want him in that position. But if you're a team that switches up guys a lot in terms of free and put them in the box, you like the versatility, and you want a guy coming downhill, that's the guy you want. And I really like him as a downhill guy. You could play him at the second level when you're in, defense on third down. You can play him at the second level. You can blitz him. He can take the slot. He can do a lot of things. As long as he's coming downhill and attacking the ball, he'll be fine. So day 2 guy will probably work himself into a starter at some point early in his career. But yeah, I mean, he's just not a guy that you want to play a lot of cover 2 with. You want him, trying to cover over the top because it might be sort of difficult for him.
All right, let's do one more defensive spot here before we jump back to offense here, Chad. Defensive tackle. I think we're probably only going to see 1, maybe 2 straight up defensive tackles in round 1 and Johnny Newton and Byron Murphy. And then I think you have some interesting players in rounds 2 and 3 that are kind of stereotypes of their position, right? You got the quicker 3 technique guys and Fisk and Hall. You have Tavondre Sweat, who's your nose tackle, and then you have some kind of do-it-all guys and, Ruko Ororo, guys like that. So your thoughts on the day 2 defensive tackle class if the Giants want to go there to try to replace Leonard Williams?
Yeah, I think you're looking at Mason Smith's really interesting out of LSU. He was
his shoulders are like this. He's walking around. He's freaking gigantic.
He wasn't super productive this year, but he's a sneaky good athlete. In that Austin Johnson sort of mold. So that could be a guy that they want to look for. He can play some 5 technique as well as play inside because of that athleticism and size. So he's a real interesting guy in the second round, I think, that they're going to be looking for. I love Tavondre Sweat. He didn't work out like Jordan Davis, so he's not going to have that kind of grade. But a guy that went a few years ago now was Terrence Mount Cody out of Alabama. But Sweat is a better athlete than him. And he doesn't have to play. A lot of people are projecting Sweat as a 3-4 nose tackle, but he doesn't have to do that. He played plenty of 4-man fronts with Texas, and he can shoot a gap at that size, and he is a problem one-on-one. And so I think a team in the second round is going to find really good value with him as well. He's not just a run plugger. He can really get it. And a couple other guys we didn't talk, or you didn't mention, Brandon Dorless out of Oregon is really interesting because he really plays more like a 5 technique, but I think a team will try him at 3 just to see if he can really explode off the ball and utilize that quickness and the way he can see the ball in the backfield. I think he'll be really interesting as a 3 technique if a team doesn't take him and want to keep him outside, which is possible as well.
Yeah, I put Dorless and Darius Robinson kind of in that same category, right? Guys that can maybe be a 4-3 traditional end, or maybe in passing situation move into the 3 technique a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. And you know what's funny about Robinson is that I think a team like Detroit and Tampa Bay will stand him up, even at 280 pounds. And I think he has that kind of ability. So that's kind of where I see him going. The last guy I just want to mention quick is Christian Boyd. Northern Iowa, look, this guy is a really good football player. He's going to play the Noah's 1 technique, and he's going to stay the line of scrimmage, 8 moving, and he's got some hustle to him. So if you get that guy in the 3rd round, he's going to be a contributor right away.
Yeah, they had trouble blocking him down in Frisco at the Shrine game. 2 guys you didn't mention, I'm curious. Chris Jenkins was a guy that was highly touted. The production never showed up. And then you mentioned Mason Smith. I want to throw out Mekhi Wingo, his teammate at LSU. I thought his tape was fun.
Yeah, I think Wingo, unfortunately, the injury this year really kind of set him back. And I was a little surprised he came out. But look, he's not huge. He's not super athletic. So there's nothing, quote, special about him. But I really like Wingo because he does get after it on every play. He does not he came back for the bowl game. He was clearly not 100%, but he went out there, gave it every snap. He's a problem every snap for his guy. So in the middle of the draft somewhere, you find a guy like that that's going to make more plays than you think, even though he's not especially tall or especially fast or anything special. But I like him as a football player in the mid rounds. And Jenkins, you want to see more from him. But it's not as though, a lot of defensive tackles that maybe aren't productive are considered, quote, lazy. And I don't think that's the issue with him. I don't know if I don't think that's the issue at all. I think it's not quite as quick twitch as some other guys. And so if you ask him to hold the line of scrimmage and to move back and, keep it within the box, he will do that, and he will eat space, and occasionally he'll get through. And he doesn't make the play as much as if you like once he gets through that gap, but he will get through. So as a rotational guy, he's going to stick in the league for a while.
Giant fans love a winner. It's why they love Citizens, named a 2022 Best Bank in the U.S. by The Banker. As the official bank of the Giants and sponsor of the Huddle, Citizens is made ready for fans of Big Blue. Learn more at citizensbank.com. All right, Chad, let's jump over to offense. Who's the first running back that's going to get picked?
Jonathan Brooks. This is my new theory of the day. So you get to hear this.
Oh, nice. What do you got? Let me hear.
Okay, so on my next mock draft, which I'm going to put in next week, it's a 5-rounder. And I think I'm going to have Jonathan Brooks going to Dallas in the 1st round. And I think
the noise, man. People in Dallas keep saying Brooks.
And I think the comparison is Todd Gurley. And Todd Gurley had a knee injury in November of his final year at Georgia. And he came back and, he was Rams made him the number 10 pick in the draft, which was too high. But he was a 1st-round pick after coming back from a knee injury, just 6 months earlier. And the way it sounds, everything sounds like Brooks is on track to be back and playing at some level this summer. And if that's the case, and Dallas, he's right in Dallas's area there, so they know all about what he's going through. If they think he's going to be ready to go, they're going to take him. And I think he's a fantastic back. He's really got like a lot of Jonathan Taylor, he's like power, but he's got some speed. And any dude that rushes for 3,500 yards as a high school senior, he's a dude regardless. But he was so good at Texas before the injury. He catches the ball in the backfield. He's so good. So I think Dallas is going to be picking him probably in the 1st round, assuming everything is good with the injury.
2nd round. You mean 2nd round?
No. I mean 1st round.
Really? You think in the 1st round they might go Brooks?
Yeah, because that's what I understand is the situation there. And like I said, typically I wouldn't say that about a guy who's coming off a knee injury like that. but it just reminds me so much of Gurley coming out. And Gurley had that same injury. And that dude, I don't know exactly how many carries he had in his first 4 years, but it was 1,000 carries. I mean, it was a lot. Gurley had a lot of carries in his first 4 years, even after that injury. And Dallas has learned its lesson, I think, with giving second contracts to running back. So they get this guy first contract, they take him, and I think that's the surprise pick I'm going to go with in my next mock.
And Brooks has barely run the ball, right? I mean,
yeah,
he was behind Rashawn Johnson. He was behind Bijan Robinson. Like,
that's
he has
right.
not run the ball at all. So he should have a lot of tread left on those tires.
That's right. So, and Dallas is the only team that I would see doing that. You know, I don't know if every other team would do that, but I could really see Dallas doing that, and really getting their guy right off the bat.
Yeah, I watched Brooks and Benson this morning, and Trey Benson from Florida State, and to me, they're similar in a lot of ways in terms of the way they both have some speed. They both are pretty well sized. They have a little bit of everything. I don't think either guy is, start, stop, super explosive necessarily. Your thoughts on Benson? Is he your second guy, and how close do you have him to Brooks?
I like Blake Corum is my second guy. But I like what I like about Benson is the open field speed. I mean, once he gets into the hole, the difference between Corum and Benson for me, and the reason I like Corum a little bit more, is that he can find the hole. He knows where the play is supposed to go. Obviously, he had some very good blockers at Michigan, but you still have to understand the play and know where the hole is going to be, when to cut it off the backside, when not to, those kind of things. And Corum's a very smart runner. So I think Corum is the second back picked. And then Benson is probably, I think Jalen Wright might go first. Then Benson. But that's kind of a toss-up. I can see why teams would go either way, depending if you want the home run back or you want more of the power back that Wright is. And it just depends on what the team wants. But boy, Benson, forget it once he's in the open field, with that. He's not the most physical back, which some teams won't necessarily like, and they might like Corum and Wright a little bit more because of that. But just forget it if that guy, if you make holes for that guy, he can turn it on.
How many of these running backs are going to go in the third round for you? Are we just going to have like a flood where you're going to have six after like very few in the first two, you're going to have 6 or 7 in the third?
I think we'll have probably 2 in the top 50 and then Wright probably late 2. Then you'd have Benson, Lloyd, maybe Will Shipley from Clemson in the third, maybe Braylon Allen in the third, but Allen's really not running this year, kind of hurts his stock. I don't know if he's going to be, he's a potential third round back. So we could have those guys, there's a few guys that could go in the 4 or 5 guys that could go in the third round.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Absolutely. I think it's a really fascinating class. And I think, the guys will go in the right spot this year. No one's going to be overdrafted necessarily, unless that first round Brooks thing happens, which case, wow, that'll be, talk about Dallas fans, panicking and losing their minds between the Prescott thing and that. It'll be a show, needless to say.
Oh, the thing about Dallas is, and if I'm Dallas, I can see how they think this way. What do they need? They need a center. Well, you can get that in round 2, 3, 4, right? I mean, like, you can find a starting center not in the first round. You can get a tackle or guard depending on what they're going to do on their offensive line. So there's some ways around where they can make themselves think, look, let's get this special player if we think he's special. Even coming off that, we can make do with the other spots. We'll see.
No, absolutely. I could totally see them looking at it that way.
But in terms of in terms of the Giants, I'm not sure how you feel. What their need still is, but I'm still projecting them, taking a running back fairly high, and I would love Corum in that spot. If you want the breakaway, Devil Singletary's not a breakaway guy, but God, if you could get Benson, Marshawn Lloyd is like a Zach Moss type of guy. So if you like that, if you want that kind of back too, I mean, you can. There's a lot of choices for the Giants on day 2.
Yeah, and that's a little teaser. So when we talk about your mock draft at the end here, as you assign one of those running backs you mentioned to the New York Football Giants. Giants might still need a guard. They bring in Jermaine Illuminor in free agency. He can be a swing guy. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? Where's Evan Neal wind up? He's going to start at tackle. We'll see. Aaron Stinney, who's been kind of a low-end starter for Tampa for a couple of years. But I could see them using a day 2, early day 3 pick on a guard here, Chad. I don't know if we're going to see any straight up guards go in the first round. I'm not considering Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton or Jordan Morgan straight up guards. They're kind of combo guys, right? So we might see the first straight up guard go in round 2 or round 3. Who are some of the guys you like in that area?
Well, one guy I was thinking about for my next mock draft for the Giants was Cooper Beebe, because that dude is a monster. And if anybody, he could be this year's Creed Humphrey, where they find some reason not to draft him high for whatever. But the
I love
guy's
his tape too, man. I'm with you. I think his tape's great.
So one of these teams in the top 50 is going to get an excellent player in Beebe, and it might be the Giants. But there's lots of Mason McCormick, South Dakota State.
Love him.
Super athlete at the combine, and it really wasn't expected, but he is a fierce blocker. So he is a third-round guy to me all day long. Some teams might look at him late second, so we'll pay attention to that, but he's gonna be in that category. Another guy, if you just want like a straight mauler, Brandon Coleman from TCU. My goodness, this guy can, and he's a good mover too. He's not too slow, but he just moves people.
He actually played some tackle in Mobile with the Senior Bowl too. They had him taking some reps of tackle on one-on-ones.
That's right. And he played at TCU. He played quite a bit of tackle as well. So it kind of shifted back and forth. Christian Mahogany out of Boston College, another potential round 3 guy, early round 4 guy. Zach Zinter. Look, Zach Zinter is probably going to go in the second round somewhere despite the injury. And, he's going to be a fantastic starting guard in the NFL. It's just a matter of whether you can how high you can take him, knowing he might not play right away. But there's honestly, the Giants have a lot of choices here in terms of guys. And like you mentioned, there's a ton of guys that are guard, center combinations. And, Tanner Bortolini from Wisconsin is a guy that could be a second round pick. Dallas could look at him. The Giants could look at him as a second round pick because he can play guard and he can play center. Zach Frazier from West Virginia has played both. So lots of different options for teams looking for that interior guy this year.
Yeah, agreed. I think there are some good options outside of that first round. All right, Chad, let's take a look at, I think we hit all the positions I wanted to hit. So why don't we take a look at your mock draft here for the Giants? We talked about some of these guys already, so we don't have to go into great detail, but it's a 4-round mock. It's up there. Malik Neighbors falls to the Giants at 6, and you mentioned the Odell Beckham Jr. comp, and I'm the first one to yell at people to don't, helmet scout.
I know.
But I'm sorry, you could take the helmets off. The dudes look the same.
I know. You can't scout the uniform, but in this case, it's too close. Like they have a lot of similarities. So, I don't know if Giants will be happy or sad if another Odell Beckham came, but he was such a great player for him, and I think Neighbors is the same kind of guy, and I think it'd be a great fit for a team that obviously could use a playmaker like that.
Any thought of, and I'm with you, I have Neighbors ahead of Odunze on my rankings board as well. But given who's already with the Giants, with Hyatt and Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson, was there any thought to a more traditional, bigger-bodied X like Odunze being a better fit in that group? And did that go into your thinking a little bit?
No, I think you just take the best player, honestly. I think Neighbors can do a lot of different stuff, to be honest. I think he is strong. He might not be as big as Odunze, but he is strong at the catch point. People are not going to beat him to the ball. And I think that's really what's important. So I think he's just a better player overall. So I didn't really think about that as much.
No, I totally get it. I would just pick the best guy as well, and then you work around it. You want to have the best possible players and let the coaches do what they do. You mentioned Blake Corum. You have him going to the Giants at number 2, trying to get some more juice in that room with Saquon Barkley. Yeah. And you kind of mentioned this already. The one thing that's a negative for Corum, he doesn't have that top-end breakaway speed. I was worried he could be a 4.6 guy, and then he ran more than good enough. What was he, a 4.51 guy, I think, at the NFL Combine?
5.3 or something like that.
Which is fine. Which, if you watch him on tape,
and look,
fine.
He is a year off of knee surgery.
That's a good point, too.
And it takes a year for them to get that full explosion back. We saw this with Nick Chubb coming out of Georgia, too. Same kind of deal. And in that particular mock that I did, he lasted till 47. I don't know that he's going to last that long, but if they did, what a bargain. He can pass protect. He's extremely natural catching the ball. Good leader. I mean, he's exactly what you want. maybe, you know, a lot of people will say, well, oh, Jim Harbaugh is going to take him with the Chargers, you know, obviously in the second round. Like, well, those kind of things don't often work out, right? You think, oh, that's an easy pick. The Chargers, those, you know, teams don't pick necessarily guys that used to play for them and all that. So he could be available, but I love that guy as a player.
He actually reminds me a lot of Devin Singletary, who the Giants brought in to replace Barkley, right? They just, that low center of gravity, great balance, make guys miss in short areas, that phone booth quickness. I think he's just the guy that's a good football player. And, you know, people think that, you know, oh, he's smaller, he can only run at 10, you know, maybe he's a part-time back. I think that guy could run it 17 times a game. I would have no problem with that.
Yeah. Height has nothing to do with that, in my opinion. It's nothing to do with
I agree.
That. In fact, it's harder to, once you get a guy like that going downhill, and again, I think he will be more explosive as his rookie year goes on, as he gets, you just saw even during this year, a guy like that is just a guy you want on your football team. And again, he could play on third down, and a lot of people don't really know that about him. Like, just think he's got a bunch of touchdowns on goal line stand. He's a third down back, so you can put him in there. He will protect your quarterback. He will catch the ball. So if you got a guy like that, you know, I'd take him every time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just his shiftiness is to find the hole. I think he'd be a real solid player. All right, next guy in round 3, Tyler Nubin, the safety. Kind of a do-everything safety, Chad, that I think would be a nice fit in that split safety defense that Bowen's going to be playing here with the Giants as their new defensive coordinator. And Nubin's played a lot of college football.
That's right. You know, he's a third-round pick. He's not the most explosive athlete, but he's a smart player. When he gets a chance to create the turnover, he does it. He's a strong run tackler. He can do a little bit of everything. Like you said, if he's a guy that you can play deep, even though he's not the fastest guy, he's so smart and he reads the quarterback so well. He can read the route so well. So he can play deep. He can come up in the box. He does everything. He's a sure tackler, exactly what you want out of a day 2 safety.
And then finally in the 4th round, Chris Abrams-Drain, who ran really well. I thought he was pretty good at the Senior Bowl in Mobile as well. A guy that I think you can play inside. He can play a little outside as well.
Yeah, I think he's got some versatility to him. Again, tough-minded corners. You got to love him, even though 170 some pounds, whatever they are. He doesn't back down from anybody. Super competitive. He can find the ball. You know, he can, and he plays through the catch point. He competes until the whistle blows, and he will knock that ball out of the receiver's hands, even if the receiver already caught the ball. So he's one of those guys that you can play in the slot, you can play outside. Really competitive guy. So in the 4th round, you know, he's a real value.
Chad, this is always fun, my man. Tell the folks where they can find all your stuff.
Well, come to NFL.com. You'll see a mock draft out there, 5-round mock draft out there next week. Got some other articles coming talking about trades and ideal picks for each teams, things like that over the next few weeks. Up until draft weekend, which is, 4 weeks away? It's coming fast.
We're in a sprint, man. Chad Reuter, NFL.com. Thanks for joining us on the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.